Welcome to TWW Southwest Ohio's Facebook Live with the candidates. We're glad you're all here. We're currently making sure all our partners are getting connected and that everything looks and sounds right, so there might be a little bit of kind of chatter and making some corrections as we go. We're connecting this evening with TWW East Cincinnati, United We Stand, and Indivisible for All, as well as several other groups. So we're excited to have you all here. And it's so exciting to have this opportunity to speak with the candidates.
Yep.
And to be able to reach out and share their perspectives and also offer the chance to many of you to ask questions. And that's what's really important, to connect with you. As you might recall, we have collected questions from Facebook from everyone who's a part of TWW. And that makes up the first part of our discussion. And then we'll be taking as many questions as we can from all of you that you post while we live stream. So please feel free to post questions as we go. We'll field them as we can, and then at the end get to as many as we can that we haven't gotten to at that point. If you want to ask a question live, click the video link of the feed itself, then comment with your question, because if you don't comment below the post, if you just comment below the post, we may not be able to see or relay that over to myself and Chris. This entire interview will be posted on TWW Southwest Ohio's Facebook page. So if you don't get the chance to watch the entire interview this evening, or you know other people that are missing it that would like to see it later, they'll be able to, you'll be able to go over to the page and see the entire interview, and it will be posted there by tomorrow. Okay, so this evening we are speaking with Chris Seelbach. Welcome. Thanks for talking with us.
Welcome to our house.
Yes, it's so nice to be here and over the Rhine. So Chris was honored by the White House as a champion of change by President Barack Obama. Chris Seelbach is currently serving his second term on Cincinnati City Council. Prior to joining council, Chris was vice president and CFO of a nationally recognized marketing and consulting firm, and also served on the staff of Cincinnati Vice Mayor David Crowley. Chris graduated from Xavier University and the University of Dayton School of Law, and was recently a Bonnet Fellow at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. Very excellent. Under Chris's leadership, Cincinnati has grown in population for the first time in 60 years, thanks to the efforts to invest in public transportation, diverse housing options, in walkable neighborhoods, and a thriving arts and entertainment scene. He has worked on behalf of the homeless, led efforts to invest $10 million in shelters, include homeless status in the city's hate crime legislation, and enact a homeless to work program. As Cincinnati's first openly gay council member, Chris has led efforts on behalf of the LGBT community to make Cincinnati the most LGBT inclusive city in the country. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Excellent. He worked to ensure 100% of electricity supplied to Cincinnati homes is backed by renewable energy, provide meaningful job training to local workers, and has been an advocate for the humane treatment of animals. The national, that's also a good thing. There's several animals watching us this evening, which is lovely. The National Association of Social Workers named Council Member Seelbach the 2015 Elected Official of the Year. Locally, Chris has been named Best Elected Official in Cincinnati by City Beat readers 2 years in a row. Chris lives in the historic Over the Rhine neighborhood where we are this evening with his longtime partner Craig Schultz and their two cats, Ruthie and Raya, who are watching as well. Very nice. All right, so we're looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better this evening.
So thanks for having me. My name is Chris Seelbach. I'm a member of council. I'm running for my last term. I'm a native of Louisville, but I've been here for almost 19 years. Came here to go to Xavier University without knowing a single person.
Wow.
Didn't expect a career in politics, but met a guy named David Crowley in 2001. He was running for council, was inspired by his story of serving in our military and coming home to run his family business, a pub in Mount Adams, and just wanting to give back, not wanting to be governor or president, but just wanting to serve. And so that kind of wrapped me into politics, and I was a part of his tenure on council, and then when he was vice mayor, he passed away in January of 2011. That's the year I ran. Everyone, all the political insiders said, we like you, we think you'd be great on council, but you're too young, you're openly gay, and you're not from here, so you'll never have a chance to win. But in 2011, we made history, and I was elected the first openly gay person, LGBT person in Cincinnati. So I know we're going to get into the heart of what I've done and why I'm running, but that's a little intro of who I am.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Chris. Okay, so we're going to start with the questions that you guys have all given to us over the past month as we started this project. So to start out, what are your exact responsibilities to the city and your constituents?
Sure. So there's basically three things that we're in charge of doing. The first and probably the most important is balancing our budget. So we have over $1 billion a year budget. Every 2 years we balance it. We update it every other year. But so this June 30th, we have to present to the state a balanced budget. So allocating dollars, taxpayer dollars, to services like police and fire and roads and health centers and public pools. So biggest job is allocating taxpayer money. The second is passing legislation, so introducing, drafting laws, and then passing them. So for instance, including homeless status in our city's hate crimes legislation. That's a law that I proposed, that I wrote, that I got support for, and that I passed. And the third thing is kind of a symbolic kind of leaders of the city. So, what that means is, when we go to events, we're representing the city, and when we go to other cities and try to get jobs to come to Cincinnati, being a leader of the city is kind of the third, more kind of ceremonial job.
All right. And how do you plan to address the needs of all your constituents, not just the ones of your party? And along those lines, we've all felt sort of the divide in the country. Do you have any thoughts around how to start building bridges and bringing that together?
So, people elected me, the majority of Cincinnati elected me, not because I agree with every single Cincinnatian, but because they agree with my values. And so, I cannot represent the beliefs of every single Cincinnatian, but what I can do is listen to every single person. And so that's why we've had numerous and multiple and regular forums in our community to get feedback on what people believe is the most important thing since a taxpayer dollars should be spent on. So I think listening to everyone, including even if I disagree with them, is the best way to connect to constituents. The second question is an incredibly important one, because I do think, the talking heads say it every day, but I do think our country is more divided than ever. And I think the reason for that is that we've segregated ourselves into groups of people who are like us. So, the people that we have lunch with or have dinner with or reach out to are people that have similar beliefs, most likely look like us. And so we don't have that sense of empathy for people who are different from us because we don't know them. So people who are of Muslim faith or who are undocumented immigrant families, because we don't know them as people, we've lost a sense of empathy for them as human beings. And so how we change that is that we get out of our comfort zone. We actually try to get to know people. We say more of, tell me more, so that we actually can try to understand people who we may disagree with or are unlike us.
All right, very nice. Now, how will you guarantee that you would be working for the best interests of your constituents and not special interests? And
right.
How do we hold you accountable?
Well, so the ultimate holding accountable is through elections. So, you get to choose every 2 or 4 or 6 years who you want to represent you. So in terms of special interest, I think we need to get corporate dollars out of political races. We need to repeal Citizens United. We need to ensure that there are caps on how much money any person or corporation or PAC can give you. I think in terms of city council, we do a pretty good job of the maximum an individual can give you is $1,100, a PAC $2,700. We cannot accept corporate donations. But this problem of money in our elections, especially in Congress, and in the Senate, and the President, is an incredibly big problem. But in terms of money in our local elections here, I think we have a pretty good regulated system where you can't buy elections. Now, independent PACs could come along in different to the candidate, spend a lot of money. So, there needs to be a tremendous amount of campaign finance reform. I'm not hopeful, but that's what needs to happen.
Mm-hmm. And how about for you? So are those all of the, do you feel things are in place in Cincinnati for the council members to be held accountable?
Yeah, so I mean, I think local elected officials are probably the people that you see at the grocery, the people that you probably know. All of our meetings are public. We have dozens of people come to all of our meetings to speak and to let us know if they think we're doing the wrong thing. But you can always be more accessible. So whether that's going to more events, but it's always a work-life balance as well. So I feel like I do a pretty good job of being in the community, of trying to listen to people. But I think we can always be pushing ourselves further to, be at more events or to listen harder to what people are saying.
Along those lines, what's the best way for your constituents to communicate with you? What are the best ways?
Yeah, I mean, I am in my 30s, so I'm definitely a social media kind of person. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. When I worked a decade or so ago for the Vice Mayor David Crowley, most of our constituent contact came through emails or phone calls or even some letters. Most of the people who are reaching out saying, I have a pothole that's not filled or my trash didn't get picked up, are reaching out through Facebook or Twitter. And so, there's so many ways that I'm available to constituents, but I found that much more that people are reaching out through social media. But, we have a staff that takes calls every day to help. So there's so many ways you can reach out, and at the heart of what we do, and I didn't mention this, is solve problems for people who are citizens of Cincinnati whose trash didn't get picked up, or who has a pothole that hasn't been filled. So a big part of our everyday job is just solving those problems.
Oh, interesting. So how will you work within the local government with City Council to move Cincinnati forward, to continue this progress?
So that's a great question. So for 60 years, we were losing population. I think the biggest factor of that is that we were competing with our suburbs. We were competing for amenities with Westchester. And this is nothing against Westchester or Blue Ash, but every city has a suburb, and we want them to be thriving in great parts of our regional community. But we have to treat Cincinnati more like an urban city and try to compete with jobs and talent with Pittsburgh or Indianapolis or Portland or Austin. And the cities that are doing well have invested in things like good public transportation, walkable neighborhoods, diverse housing stock, meaning that no matter your income, you can choose to live in any neighborhood you want, thriving arts and entertainment. So we weren't doing that for a long time. And I think just in the last 10 years, we've started investing in those things that are they are the amenities that attract people to cities. When you go to Chicago, you don't say, show me your suburb, I can't wait to see it. You expect there to be fun things to do, easily accessed by public transportation and walkable streets. And we didn't focus on that for a long time. So I think the change in that has led to us increasing our population. And so the question is, how do we continue that momentum? And it's a balance of, because we've been giving big tax breaks to developers to bring jobs and build buildings. But we're getting to the point where I think people want to bring jobs and have and build things in Cincinnati. So I think we have to have a more moderate approach to the tax breaks. And we also, but there are neighborhoods like Bond Hill or Madisonville where things are starting to move along, but we need to accelerate it. So maybe it's shifting the focus of tax breaks from downtown over the Rhine to more of our neighborhoods.
All right. Excellent.
I could go on and on about that.
Yeah. I know that you've been very involved in all of those kinds of things. I've got kind of two questions. Part of this question is coming in live which is fantastic. We're glad folks are tuning in. But how do you feel about Cincinnati's sanctuary status? And will you work to keep Cincinnati a sanctuary city? As well as what would you do in another term for refugees and immigrants and things like that?
So let me just say that Councilwoman Yvette Simpson and I had been working on actual legislation, laws that were to protect immigrant families, even if they're undocumented in Cincinnati, from being torn apart and possibly sent back to countries where they could be killed. Councilmember Young was going to introduce a resolution declaring that we were a sanctuary city. A Friday, the Monday afterwards, the mayor decides he's going to declare us a sanctuary city. It means nothing. It's a resolution that's non-binding. It is not a law. It just states that we are welcoming. So this idea that we're that something changed, it didn't. But it needs to. We need to ensure that all Cincinnati families, even if they're Hispanic or undocumented, are safe here. And it's not at the expense of anyone else. It's because we value every single person that lives here. And so we are looking at everything we can do to ensure that happens. So, yeah, I mean, I'm fine. I support us calling ourselves a sanctuary city. It doesn't really mean anything. I would like for it to mean something. I would like for us to actually take proactive action to ensure that, if you are an immigrant family in Cincinnati, you're not afraid right now because you fear that our president could send you back to a country where you could be killed. I mean, what's happening in Syria, and we have Syrian refugees here. We're all human beings, and this idea that someone is, more valuable than another is just, baloney. We're all equal, and we all have to do more to take care of each other.
And you said that you do have legislation that
we're
you're working on now.
Yes.
Okay.
So we want to make sure it's legal. Immigration is not a local issue. It's really a federal government issue, and so there are certain things that we have limits on doing, but we're exploring all the options to ensure that these families are safe.
Okay. I'm going to take one of the live posted questions really quickly. So it's asked, Chris, what's going on with that resist sign? Any way to make that discussion a discussion that joins people?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I mean, so what the person is talking about is that in Hyde Park Square, a lawyer in town went through the permit process to put up a sign that says "We resist." He paid for all of the appropriate permit fines or payments, and he put this "We resist" sign up on Hyde Park Square. It's based on our constitutional right to free speech, and it was torn down by someone. It's back up. What I think about it is that, this is what our country is about. The fact that we can express beliefs even when we disagree. I mean, I'm not comparing these two, but the KKK had a display on Fountain Square for years. Obviously, 99.9% of people think that that's wrong, but yet it is part of our country allowing people to express what they believe. And so I hope that it does bring people together, and I hope that it also makes people question the fact that 80% of Cincinnati voters voted for Hillary Clinton. And so if you think that you're living in a city where Donald Trump has some kind of uncanny support, it's not true. And I appreciate that this person is speaking out and saying all of the stuff that's happening right now is not okay. And the fact that a church in Clifton was spray-painted anti-gay slurs this past weekend. The fact that we've had 2 Jewish facilities vandalized, a mosque vandalized. This is all related to our current leadership, and it's not okay. So, I support not only the constitutional, freedom to express yourself, but the sentiment that belongs behind it.
Okay. Real quickly, someone had asked a little bit about when we were talking about the some of the legislation you're working on with immigrants and refugees.
Yep.
And someone asked for a clarification, saying, from what I understand, it's ICE and the sheriff who make deportation decisions. Is that correct?
That's true. I mean, so Cincinnati police officers, their responsibility is not to enforce federal immigration laws. So we have no power. If federal immigration officers wanted to come to Cincinnati and deport families because they're undocumented, they can legally do that. And we're not going to prevent them from doing that. We respect the chain of government. But what we have said is that our police officers are not going to do something that they're not responsible for. You know, they're responsible for making sure that Cincinnati people are safe from gun violence, from texting and driving. It is not their role to enforce federal immigration laws. So they are correct in that if federal immigration officers wanted to come to Cincinnati and start rounding up immigrants, they could do that.
Okay.
And our current sheriff, who is a Democrat, although attended a Donald Trump rally, he has said that he will not direct his deputies to do their job and not enforce federal immigration policy, that he will, in a sense, round up any undocumented immigrant. Very disappointing, if you ask me.
Okay. All right. Thank you. What is your plan, or do you have any plans on taking on racial healing in the city? And how does it differ, perhaps, if at all, from things that you've done in the past?
So, you know, Cincinnati is one of the most segregated cities in the country still. We have a long history of racial tensions that culminated in 2001 with the unrest. And you know, I think we are a model as our police department on what you can do is in terms of community-oriented policing. But race and sex and sexual orientation, these are issues that the laws change much faster than the hearts and minds. So the Civil Rights Act passed 50 years ago, but sexism and racism and bias towards people of different national origins exist every single day. You know, Kevin Flynn, who was in a wheelchair, the ADA passed in 1990, but he can't access many of the buildings still in our own city. So we have to understand that laws change much faster than hearts and minds. So what we need to do is, again, going back, if people knew people as people, they would be much less racist or sexist or treating people different. As a city, we have to do a better job of making sure that the dollars we spend go to the people who reflect our city. When I was first elected, I think less than 5% of contracts went to people of color or women-owned businesses. It's why we just established a Department of Economic Inclusion to try to make those numbers go up. But, you know, the problem is, and we've solved it in some ways by giving more money, more contracts to people who are already doing well. But what we need to do better is make sure that if someone has an idea for a small business, if they want to get off their feet, that we give them the resources and open the door so that they can establish a business, so that the wealth that we spend on contracts is spread over a lot of people, not just two wealthy people. So that's one thing we can do.
All right. Let me make sure we're covering everything folks are talking about. Question about Sanctuary City.
Yep.
Back to that for a quick moment. What are we as a Sanctuary City doing to bring in more bilingual officers and first responders? Anything going on there?
It's a great question. We have, I think, 2 police officers who speak Spanish and a very large force. So one of the things that I'm looking at right now is how to incentivize more of our current officers to go through training to become bilingual, including maybe grants that allow them to immerse themselves in a culture, because as we know, it's much easier to learn a language when you're around people who are all speaking it. So we're looking at incentives to do that. And then as we hire these new officers, and we have been bringing on new recruit classes almost every year, we're absolutely making diversity of the force a factor. So we want more women, especially on our fire department. We want more people who speak different languages. They are definite factors in how we're bringing on new recruits.
All right.
But it's unacceptable that only a couple people speak Spanish on our force.
Yeah, that's exciting that something's happening there.
Yep.
That's fantastic. All right. So a little bit about schools now and education.
Yep.
So how will you help to ensure that public schools are providing comparable and competitive education regardless of race, economic status of the students?
So first of all, we need to understand that we have a completely separate school board that runs our schools. So City Council, in some ways, has no basis on our education system. Now, we do employ some nurses at our schools. We have some kind of contact, but it is really our school board who is responsible for all of the stuff to deal with our schools. But we can be a good partner, ensuring that we do have these school nurses. And beyond nurses, we have dentists, and so there's some model schools where, because so many of our kids don't get access to health care or going to the dentist or a healthy lunch, and so the city can ensure that we have those resources, that they do see a doctor when they come to school. Okay. And I was a big proponent of the preschool promise. As we know, 90% of our brain is before we turn 6, but we spend 95% of education dollars after 6. We need a better focus on early childhood education, because if a child has that good care when they're very young, the likelihood that they're going to go to college, mm-hmm. have a job to support their family, is exponentially higher. So you don't have to spend so much money making sure they get into college because they've had the good early childhood education.
Well, then, as a council member, are there any specific things that you are doing, that the council members are doing, to support that kind of early childhood education and things like that? Are there any specific things
So
happening?
we just passed Preschool Promise.
Okay.
So many of us were proponents of that. It was on the ballot.
Okay.
The voters passed it. So it was a property tax increase, mm-hmm. that's going to allow almost all 4 to 6 year olds to have access to either free or subsidized preschool in Hamilton County.
So it starts at 6?
It starts at 4.
At 4, okay.
Yep.
All right.
So,
all right, excellent.
Yep. It's a game changer, really.
Yeah.
When we talk about poverty or education, getting those kids, and we're not going to see it for a decade or 2 decades, right. But getting those kids into quality preschool is going to change drastically poverty and crime, mm-hmm. a decade or 2 decades from now.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to a little bit about health and safety, accessibility, some very important topics for our members.
Yep.
And so talk a little bit about what the city's responsibility is related to public health, and what role would you propose that city government play in sort of population health and management, and kind of the resolution of some of the health disparities that exist in our city?
So, so many people, especially candidates for council and mayor, say safety is the number one priority. Okay. It has to be the number one priority. I disagree, because who cares if you're not healthy? Who cares if there's going to be a crime committed against you? Mm-hmm. Because if you're dying or dead, someone who's going to mug you on the street, well, you're dead. So, I think the health of our citizens is the number one priority. It's why we have, one of the few cities in the country that we actually fund health centers. So over 40,000 people a year are relying on our health center, which are mostly free. And so they're getting everything from care if you're pregnant, to if you have a cold, to breast cancer screening. So we're providing that for over 40,000 residents at a cost that I think is if I always like to talk to people about police and fire and say, if you had $100, that's our budget, what percentage would you give to police and fire? No one has ever said what it really is, which is 70% of our budget goes to police and fire. Mm-hmm. Now, they're incredibly important, and we have to continue funding them at the highest level possible. But that is, Joe Biden says, don't tell me your priorities, show me your budget, and I'll tell you what your priorities. Mm-hmm. Our priorities are, the safety. But we have to make sure that people are healthy, or their safety doesn't matter. So we have to continue. We have a big budget deficit this year. We cannot close a single health center. We have to continue expanding regardless of what happens to Obamacare. because the health of people is the most important thing that we can do as a government.
Right. And then anything related to that, any plans or your thoughts on combating the current opioid epidemic?
Yeah, so the heroin epidemic is incredible, and we're not talking about it enough. No single person or idea is going to solve it. The part of it that I've worked on and that I'm pushing for in this budget is directly related to hepatitis C and HIV. So between 2011 and 2015, we had about 400 cases of acute hepatitis C per year. In 2016, it was over 800. So we're seeing a direct correlation between people doing intravenous drug use and contracting hepatitis C. And as you know, you can become sober, but hepatitis C lasts a lifetime, and it can really harm a person. So I proposed a syringe exchange program that in every city that has one, it's successful. And basically for under $200,000 a year, we would access 15,000. We currently have a syringe exchange program that is underfunded, and the funding is running out in June. And 15,000 needles are exchanged every month. 1,300 people are using it. And of those 1,300, 10% are connected to services to get off of heroin. So for less than $200,000 a year, we can ensure at least 130 people a month are connected to services to get off of heroin. So that's my part of the solution to a big problem that I'm working on.
All right, excellent. A couple more questions coming in live. So, and we might get a little bit into this later, but where does Cincinnati stand regarding environmental protections?
So
pretty relevant.
Yeah, so
right now.
One of the things I'm most proud of doing on council is the voters passed what's called gas and electric aggregation, which allows all Cincinnati homeowners to, the city basically leverages what your provider is going to charge you on behalf of all of the Cincinnati homeowners. So, a lot more people means you get a better deal. And when we did that, we not only reduced the rates of all the Cincinnati homeowners, we actually bought clean energy on the market. So every single city, every single house has energy backed by renewable credits. We're the largest city in the country that has 100% of our electricity backed by renewable clean energy. And it's a fight every 2 years to continue to renew that, but we just did renew it. We're also a city that has one of the most expansive recycling programs. We recycle everything except compost. We just expanded to include fabric. People that are living in the city, they probably got a big orange bag that you put any kind of clothes or rags, and we're actually recycling fabric now. So we have the model for LEED abatements in the country. So if you build a building and it's LEED, silver, platinum, gold, you get a great tax credit for that. So, and other cities are modeling it for us. So, modeling us to do their own. So, I feel really good about what we're doing to protect the environment. We have solar panels on City Hall. The zoo has one of the biggest solar kind of things in the country. So, we have to make sure that we keep on it, and if there's other ideas, but I think we're doing a lot for the environment.
So you said that it's up for discussion again, and there's a fight every 2 years about this. What's the fight over, and are there things that we should be doing to support council members about that? Yes, the fight is over. You could save even more money if we bought coal energy. So let's say your bill was $100. So with going with a renewable, we saved you $8. So your bill is $92. If we bought coal or dirty energy, your bill might be $90. So maybe you could save $2 more, but we think the value of us as a city and as citizens here that it's worth $2 more to make sure that we're adding to the ocean of energy, clean water or clean energy. Okay. So that's what the fight is about. Okay. All right. So I think some of these are also coming along with the questions we've got. Can you speak about your views on racial justice and about the shootings of black people by police, and for example, the fact that Earl Jones, who was charged with the shooting of Kevin Neary last year, is likely getting a plea deal next week and not going on trial for aggravated murder.
I can't speak to that specific case.
Okay.
I don't know all the details. I'd be happy to research them, and whoever asks the question, I'll get back to you. But I can say that racial justice and racial inequality is an incredibly important issue, and it's more than an issue. It's the life of people. So I am committed in every bone of my body to doing whatever we can to ensure that whoever you are and whatever color or race or gender, that you have as good a shot as anyone else. And that is as big of a heroin issue. This is even bigger, racial justice. And so we have to do a better job ensuring that that black men aren't going to jail, that our jails aren't overcrowded because of drug convictions. There's so many issues that we need to tackle, but I'm committed to doing whatever we can to do that.
Okay. And then there was a question about kind of the lack of grocery stores in some of our city neighborhoods. Can you address that? Are there any plans in the works? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's called food deserts, and we have food deserts in I think 7 or 8 of our neighborhoods where there's not easily accessible walking distance to a grocery store. I will tell you that the Clifton Market, which is a co-op market that the neighbors came up with, council passed $400,000 in funding to it. It was vetoed by this current mayor, John Cranley. We need to do more of that, encouraging communities to develop co-ops so that they can successfully open grocery stores in their neighborhood, and we need to support them financially. We also need to do whatever we can to incentivize through tax credits and subsidies that grocery stores like Kroger or Fresh Market are willing to go into neighborhoods and open stores. So it's an ongoing discussion, but it's on our radar that we want to make sure that every single Cincinnatian has access to produce and good food that's not found at a convenience store or a mini mart.
Okay. Any specifics on the docket right now?
Yeah, so we have a commission just looking at food deserts.
Okay.
And how we can, so the Clifton Market is one, but the Walnut Hills Kroger is about to close. So we are looking at ways that we can best subsidize and incentivize grocery stores in all of our neighborhoods so that there is access.
Okay. All right. Now, I'd like to talk for a moment about gun violence.
Yep.
So what kind of programs would you propose or implement to reduce some of the gun violence in the city and help in that area? So
unfortunately, the state took away the right of all local governments to do anything with guns. So not only can we not pass any kind of law that has to do with a gun, we had to repeal current language in our code that had to do with guns. It's incredibly unfortunate because our state is controlled by all Republicans. Most of the urban cities are all controlled by Democrats, so they wanted to take the rights away from the Democrats to do anything with guns. Look, this is one of the big issues of our time. And if 10 to 20, 30 kindergartners in Sandy Hook doesn't wake us up to the fact that we need sensible gun laws, I don't know what will. But as someone who came from a background where all of my uncles are hunters, and I respect their right to do that, there's something going on in our culture where things don't end in fistfights anymore. They end in a semiotic weapon killing dozens of people, and it's not okay. And so we need a ban on these automatic and semi-automatic weapons. We need more investments in mental health care, ensuring that people who have a problem don't lead to gun violence. There's so much we need to do with guns, but I'm incredibly worried that nothing will happen. That thoughts and prayers are just not enough, but our leaders who are influenced so much by the gun lobby will just let the status quo stand.
Okay. What kinds of things would you do to support women's health care in Southwest Ohio? And thoughts on supporting Planned Parenthood in Southwest Ohio? So
I just honored the Associate Medical Director who was at Planned Parenthood for 40 years yesterday, Joanne Keck, Dr. Joanne Kirsch. So I'm incredibly supportive of Planned Parenthood. We know that Planned Parenthood does not only access to reproductive care, but education around STDs and HIV and breast cancer screenings. It's an incredibly important service that deserves to be funded. As a city, again, a local city doesn't have any jurisdiction over abortion or reproductive care, but we can ensure, and as leaders, advocate for funding of Planned Parenthood on a federal level, and that there's no impediment in our city to access to make your own reproductive care decisions, which is a constitutionally protected right. Mm-hmm. You know, when we were honoring Dr. Kirsch yesterday, some colleagues were uncomfortable because, you know, she had worked at Planned Parenthood, but, you know, this woman served our city and our community very well and did nothing wrong. I mean, access to making your own reproductive health care decisions is a constitutionally protected right. You may not like that, and I don't like all constitutionally protected rights, but it is a right. So we need to fight to protect that.
Okay. How about supporting legislation? Your thought on legislation allowing LGBTQ parents in communities the ability to adopt?
So I'm very against that.
Okay.
Gay people should never have kids.
Yeah.
They would be horrible.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you know, I'm incredibly supportive. Cincinnati had a 60 on the Human Rights Campaign's Municipal Equality Index when I came here. We have 114 with bonus points now. We've done every single thing, including being the first city in the country to ban conversion therapy for minors, third city in the country to have transgender inclusive health care. We're a leader on LGBT rights, and so I have done and will continue to do everything to make sure that regardless of who you love, you have the exact same access to the American dream that all of us have.
Okay, and I think one of the key questions was, would you oppose legislation limiting the right?
No.
Okay.
As a gay person, no.
Yeah. All right. And again, some other questions along some of these lines. Do you support legislation guaranteeing transgender individuals the ability to use the public restrooms?
Yes.
And is that still a debate in Cincinnati? Is that still occurring?
No. I mean, you know, private companies or private spaces, they may have issues with that, although I've not heard of any. But Cincinnati is a welcoming and inclusive city for transgender people. We held a rally a month ago for when Donald Trump's administration changed the guidelines in terms of bathrooms in public schools, saying that the city of Cincinnati and our public school system was committed to allowing transgender young people to use the bathroom that they associate with their gender. You know, transgender equality is one of our big issues at the time as well. And, you know, a lot of people don't understand or don't know transgender people. But in sexual orientation is very different. Sexual orientation and race is different as sexual orientation and gender identity. Yeah. Sexual orientation is who you're attracted to. Gender is, you know, the sex that you identify with, and we're all assigned a sex when we're born based on what our body looks like. But that doesn't mean that when that person grows up, that's the gender that they identify with. And so we have to do more to ensure that trans people are safe and protected.
Okay, excellent. Any thoughts on getting young people involved in politics? Do you see that happening more often? Do you have thoughts on getting young people more involved in politics?
Yeah.
You were young.
I was. So when I first ran for council, there was no one under 40 on city council.
Oh my goodness.
And with the election of P.G. Sittenfeld and Yvette Simpson and I, there's two of us were in our 30s when we were elected. PG was still in his 20s, but now there's three of us in our 30s. And so I hope that shows young people that you can do it. That when people say, you know, you need more experience or, you know, you need to wait in line, and I think that the millennial generation pretty much says, I don't care what you think, I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that more young people do take the opportunity to run for office. I mean, when you look at the demographics of Congress, it's diverse in gender and race, but in age, it's very, I mean, the youngest person there may be one or two people in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
We need more young people because democracy is about truly representing the people that make up America.
Yeah. Okay. We had some questions about accessibility in Cincinnati.
Okay.
Do you have, are you supporting legislation? Are there current efforts right now on improving accessibility in Cincinnati? Things like more accessible buses, relay instead of TTY, accessibility in jails and city hall, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, so Kevin Flynn has been a great voice on city council about making sure that regardless of your ability, you can do whatever you want in our city. We have to do a better job. I mean, when we build sidewalks and put a big lamppost in the middle of the sidewalk, we're not thinking that someone in a wheelchair can't, access that. And the ADA does not have exceptions for historic buildings. So when these historic buildings are renovated, if they don't have a way for a person in a wheelchair to access them, they're in violation of the ADA. And we have to do a better job going after that, of ensuring that when we approve building permits, that it includes access for all people. We are not doing a good enough job of making sure our city is accessible, and especially as the baby boomer generation ages, that we want to be a city that's welcoming of people that are seniors or that have different abilities. So it's one of the issues we have to do a better job of.
Okay. Do you oppose so-called religious freedom legislation, which allows for discrimination on the basis of one's religious beliefs? And if not, how will you defend this legislation? Yeah,
I mean, first of all, I support that, if a Catholic priest doesn't want to marry a gay couple, I support his or her right to, or it would only be him, because women can't be Catholic priests. But I would support his right to have that religious freedom. But if a Catholic person owns a bakery and won't sell to a gay couple, then no. Part of doing business in our country is not, choosing who your customers are, but being open, accessible, and, you're selling a cake. You're not making a political statement. And so, absolutely, I respect the right of religious leaders to, not have to perform ceremonies that would make them uncomfortable. But if we're talking about, a wedding photographer or then no. I mean, that's why we have non-discrimination laws that say, you're a for-profit business. You can't discriminate against people because of their gender or their race.
Are those laws being threatened at all in Cincinnati today?
No, not in Cincinnati. No, but there's been talk of a statewide law that has been talked about being introduced, and we're seeing with Donald Trump and our Congress that this term religious liberty is being thrown around, which I think is it's really a license to discriminate and not a religious liberty. And that's just not who we are. I mean, we were founded on freedom and equality, and the fact that people want to openly discriminate by not selling someone a cake, it's not who we are.
All right. Shifting gears now to the environment.
Yep.
So some questions around the environment. A lot of it centering around water and water treatment. So what's the current condition of Cincinnati's water treatment plants? Like, are they overloaded? Anything like that? How does this affect the Mill Creek and Ohio River? And then kind of in there, what plans do you have regarding the ongoing battle between the city and county over upgrading our sewer system? Right,
so we're under a federal mandate. The Sierra Club sued the city of Cincinnati in the 90s and said that you're not taking good enough care of your sewer system. We're under a federal consent decree now to replace our entire sewer system. It's a $3 billion project over the next several decades. And because our sewer district is co-owned between the city and the county, there's been lots of public bickering over how to exactly implement that mandate. I think now with the county commission that's controlled by Todd Portuna and Denise Treehouse, we're going to see a lot more collaboration and a lot less fighting. But in terms of our water system is the best in the country. It's not in any way over exceeding its ability, but we have always gotten awards for the quality of our water. The Mill Creek is going to be a part of the sewer. It's called Project Groundwork. So that's going to be part of it. But our water system is one of the best in the country. And I think that the sewer upgrade, you're going to see a lot more collaboration.
Okay. All right. And then you've kind of mentioned some of the programs that you've been working on making us more environmentally responsible. Are there any others? So you talked about the power resourcing and things like that. Are there any other ones that...
we can always do a better job, and I'm sure that there's things that other cities are doing to better their environment. I know that I think the city of Seattle or Portland divested from investing in any kind of dirty energy. So if there are ideas that people have that we could be doing a better job of, I'd love to hear them.
All right, excellent. Transportation. How will you, do you have any thoughts or plans on helping to alleviate poverty in Cincinnati via transportation? So by improving the bus system and other public transportation, and any other plans to serve these underserved areas? Yeah,
so when we talk about 50% of our families live in poverty, it's two things. It's quality jobs, so good paying jobs, and access to those jobs. And our Metro bus system is just not cutting it. We've had a system where we make tweaks for 50 years. In 2009, we saw tremendous cuts from the Great Recession. We need to start over with our Metro bus system. We need to bring companies like Design Impact on board that really talks to the users who are using our bus system or not to get to work every day, and design a system from scratch that has one purpose, and that is getting middle class or lower income people from their home to their job as fast as possible. So it's better routes, it's more frequency of routes, but I think we need to start over on our Metro bus system.
Oh, wow. Okay. And do you think the city is correctly apportioning taxpayer funds to support professional sports teams?
Absolutely. The city isn't, but the county is.
Okay.
I mean, the county struck one of the worst deals in the history of America with the Bengals in the stadium, I guess in the early 2000s. And so absolutely, the county government is spending way too much. But the city does not spend, to my knowledge, any money.
Okay, so it's county government.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And then someone asked, what is Cincinnati's best accomplishment recently, and what is the area's greatest challenge? What are you proud of?
I mean, I think what I'm proud of is we have seen incredible development in downtown Over the Rhine. Over the Rhine, over a decade ago, was one of the least safe, least sought-after neighborhoods in the country. Buildings were falling into the streets. People were being victimized every day. And in less than a decade, we've brought it to one of these most exciting, sought-after, incredibly diverse restaurant row areas of the country. So I'm most excited about that incredible turnaround of this neighborhood that was falling into the streets. And, when I think of Cincinnati, I think of our place on the river and our historic buildings. And so saving these buildings has been our greatest challenge. Is poverty. Is that it's unacceptable that 50% of families are still not experiencing this renaissance, and we have to do a better job connecting them to high-paying jobs and incentivizing those high-paying jobs in neighborhoods outside of downtown Over the Rhine.
Okay, all right. So let's see, another Facebook Live post. What are your thoughts on funding education programs that promote peaceful conflict resolution along with the anti-bullying campaigns?
I think that would be great.
Okay. Is that something the city would get involved in?
So,
or is that a private citizen action?
Both. So we fund currently, I think, $4 million in social services funding. So we do it through the United Way. They determine how to best allocate our money to our priorities. So yes, we do that, but $4 million of a $1 billion budget is not a lot. So we do fund programs like that, but again, it's our number one priority is police and fire officers.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Excellent. What about the displacement of some former residents of Over the Rhine?
Yeah, I mean, I know that it's very political to say Over the Rhine is being gentrified. You have to be wealthy to live there. It's just not the truth. At the height of this neighborhood, 50,000 people lived here. Currently, 6,000 or 7,000 people live here. There is room for everyone, and we have taken tremendous steps to ensure that if you are low income, that there is housing here, and that the housing is just as nice as if you are a millionaire. There have been maybe 1 or 2 condos that have sold for $1 million. Most of them are affordable for a middle-class family. And we just allocated $2 million to ensure that we're going to have more affordable housing in Over the Rhine. So, I know that there have been some people displaced, but this idea that Over the Rhine is being gentrified so that you have to be wealthy to live here, it's just not true.
Okay. All right. So someone asked about the sewer. So you were talking about the sewer upgrades and things like that, and they asked, is that why our sewer bills are so high, the overhauling of the sewer system? Many municipalities around us have much lower sewer bills.
It's absolutely. We have no choice. We are being mandated to replace our sewers. The cost is being passed on to the user. There's no choice in it. So yes, that's why your bills are higher.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Excellent. Well, I think that's all the time we have. Do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share with us to wrap us up this evening?
No, I think that this is a great opportunity to talk to people and hopefully connect to people who may not come to City Hall every week or come to a candidate forum. So I just want to commend you all for doing a great job of helping to connect candidates and elected officials to people who may not be able to hear us on a regular basis. So thank you.
Excellent. Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time this evening. It's been great to talk with you, hear all about your passion for Cincinnati and Over the Rhine. So don't forget, everyone, that this entire interview will be posted on TWW Southwest Ohio's Facebook page. So if you don't get the chance to watch this entire interview now, or other people that would like to watch this, you can listen when convenient, go back. Every now and then, if you post a question, they'll come back in and answer those online on Facebook and things like that. So thank you so much, everybody. That's our evening.